let's take a look at a map here of Rafah so people can get a bit of an understanding of where the area we're going to talk about. We're going to be talking about along the border there with Egypt. That's the Philadelphia corridor that Nora was talking about in her introduction. The Salah el-Din gate there, that's just southeast of the Rafah refugee camp. The fighting has been in that quadrant over the last week. And as we heard on Nora's report, Israelis have actually moved up at significant speed up the Philadelphia corridor. And the Philadelphia corridor was an area, a buffer zone that Israel created before they left the Gaza Strip. And all through the Second Intifada, the Philadelphia corridor was used as a tank patrol line that would fire into the camps in Rafah. I lived in Rafah for a time during the Second Intifada, and it was a brutal area. They would randomly fire into the buildings, into the camp, constantly trying to push people back off the border. And then, of course, they famously demolished the houses along the corridor, the Philadelphia corridor. And that's where the brave activist Rachel Corrie was trying to defend houses in that area. Tom Herndale is another international who was defending the attempts to create this buffer zone. And after the disengagement, Israel and Egypt came up with an arrangement where the Philadelphia corridor would be a demilitarized zone. And so the Israelis moving up at great speed up the Philadelphia corridor, which they have done from Kerem Shalom down in the far south of that map that you see there. And over the last 36 hours, they pushed through the Rafah camp along the border and made it as far as Tel Sultan. So they have more than 3/4 of the Philadelphia corridor in their under their control, insofar as anything is under Israeli control, because we're going to go to Jabalia in the north today, and we'll remember we reported in November that the Israelis said they had complete operational control over Jabalia, which was just a joke. But in terms of what's on the Philadelphia corridor, is the tunnel apparatus that connects Gaza to Egypt. And so this is a place that has been under attack by Israel for many generations now. Their first opportunity to move into Rafah, and they take the Philadelphia corridor, which is for them a strategic piece of real estate. And you can see how far that stretches their supply line from the border in Kerem Shalom there, from their border crossing in Kerem Shalom, all the way up through to Tel Sultan that you can see in the upper left corner of the map. The blue you see in the top upper left is the Mediterranean. So you're coming right up, and that's Al Mawasi, the area that we've been talking about on the show, where they have forced 1.5 million people from all over Gaza to live there on what Nora described accurately as essentially a sand dune, at best a beach, with no roads, no infrastructure, no equipment. And so people now in that area are panicking because of the advance all the way through Tel Sultan on the Philadelphia corridor. There's people moving out of Mawasi, and the footage today, I think you talked about it, Nora, in the introduction, but the footage just literally from the last 24 hours is another mass exodus from Mawasi, from the safe area, because of the tent massacres, because they've been massacring people daily for the last number of days in those safe zones. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the area that we're going to be talking about down there near the Salah el-Din gate, which is the second crossing. That's the new crossing. The Rafah al-Auda crossing is what people talk about as the Rafah crossing. And the Salah el-Din gate is a secondary crossing for trucks. So yeah, just wanted to give people a good sense of what we were talking about. And we can start with the first one, but I just want to say that there was a poll in Israel this week that said that 10% of Israelis believe that Israel is winning the war. So 10% of Israelis who don't see any resistance videos, who don't see any of the carnage in Gaza, who only see propaganda on their televisions covered by a military censor. Only 10% of their population believes Israel is winning. 40% believe Hamas is winning, and the rest are in some variation of uncertain which. But 10% to believe, only 10% of your population to believe you're winning is virtually the statistical margin of error for zero. It would include some, some zealots on the far right that believe that the destruction of Gaza is winning. But 10% of their population now. And I've been reporting these polls from time to time, just mostly just to give a sense what's going on in Israel, because these polls were like 90% in October when they started attacking. And they're now down to 10%. And also just to say that Politico did a story with U.S. military intelligence, asking U.S. military intelligence for their assessments. And according to U.S. military intelligence, 70% of the Qassam brigades are intact, 70% are intact. And their recruiting is, of course, many-fold more than the fighters that they've lost. And another interesting note, 65% of the tunnel network is still intact, according to U.S. military sources. The same sources that don't know how big the tunnels are. They don't know how many kilometers the tunnels are. Nobody's made it down into beyond the first layers of the tunnels. But their indication is that after 8 months of genocide, the most basic military objectives, getting your people back, degrading Hamas. I mean, they said they were going to destroy Hamas. They said they were going to destroy Hamas in the future, the idea of Hamas in the future with this military operation. And the reality is, for military objectives, they've reached very little. 70% of the fighting force still intact. That's heavy losses for Qassam. It's a fighting force with 40,000 soldiers. But for an 8-month war, that is a fraction of what Israel. It's a fraction of what Israel claims that they're achieving. So Israel has a higher percentage of destroyed homes in Gaza, according to the United Nations, a higher percentage of destroyed homes in Gaza than they have tunnels that are intact by a factor of 3. So just to give you a sense, they've taken down very little of the tunnel apparatus. And as we know, the tunnel apparatus is a spider web. So you don't just take down one tunnel, or because you blew up one tunnel entrance, that doesn't mean the tunnel is destroyed. So I'm gonna underline that 65% intact, and we'll come back to that, because I'm sure the number is considerably higher than that. That is intact. So yeah, sorry, I slowed you up there, tomorrow, but let's go to number 1 here, because we're going to look in Rafah. This is in the Brazil neighborhood in the southeast corner of Rafah, where I showed you near the Saladin gate. And what you're seeing there is a Merkava with his tank barrel pointed directly at the fighter from, I don't know what that is, 20 feet, 30 feet away, way too close for the active protection system on the tank to engage that round. And also just one of the videos that we've seen where a fighter is in front of the tank when he's carrying out that operation. So if you have a Brave meter, that's high on the Brave meter, as high as we've seen on the Brave meter, to come out from that alleyway and blast that tank. Let's look at it again, because you can see the distance. That's the tank barrel underneath that you see pointing at him. So this fighter's going to step out, staring down the tank barrel. The tank barrel is staring at him, and he gets his shot off. There's no interception of that, and it's hitting the tank barrel of that tank. This second one is an 85 millimeter RPG being fired there at a Namur troop carrier, population 12 inside the troop carrier. This weapon that we're seeing used here is the one that Qassam retrofitted and put a second charge on most of them. So there are some of these that don't have that second charge, apparently. So one more time around here, you can see the tank. It's one house away from the fighter. He's not coming up from behind. He's not coming up from the side. The barrel is pointed directly at him. He steps out of the alley and blasts the tank. And again, the fighter there, you can see the Yasin round flying through the air in that moment. And the fighter returns to their base, something that is something that we see as a principal pillar of the resistance at this time. From a group that used to employ suicide bombings in the Second Intifada to now returning to their base safely as the pillar of their fight, meaning all of these fighters are then more skilled fighters, more able to fight, more able to carry out the war of attrition that Israel is looking like it's setting itself up for. You're fighting a war of attrition 8 months into having these fighters operationally experienced, fighting your fighting force. There again, you can see the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 round flying through the air on this one. And you can see the way that the destruction, the active protection system radar can't pick up these rounds when they're being fired through the trees and buildings and ruins like that. And so you can see another hit there that's not a trophy interception. We can go to the next one. The trophy interceptions are what you always hear the Israelis saying, that everything is intercepted by this magical trophy system, like their magical Iron Dome system. We'll get to that in a bit. But the trophy system is not magical. It misses most of these rounds that we're seeing because the fighters are fighting within a 60-meter radius of the target, within 60 meters of the target. As we see here, they're firing from the living room right out to the tank that's on Merkava 4 out in the streets. And we see again another example of the fighters using the destroyed landscape. Look at that. The military vandalism in this is just ridiculous. There's no military purpose to smashing the house like that. The house then gets used as a fighting position, and your radar can't pick it up. Yeah, that's good. So you can see here in this shot, that's a 𝐓𝐴𝐶, and we don't always see the best shots of the 𝐓𝐴𝐶. He's actually got the second charge, the 60. You're seeing the 105 millimeter, which the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 is named after, the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 105. You see the bulge in front that he's holding there. That's the 105 millimeter. There's a 64 millimeter charge that's just underneath that cinder block that's broken. But look at the house. Look at the background. Look at the destruction that just allows fighters to move and only targets the civilians whose homes you're destroying. You're not impeding in any way the fighters. In fact, you're assisting the fighters because they're able to take cover in a situation like this. This is just a war against the population of Gaza. And anyone who's been watching our show this up till now, you'll know that because it's a target. The war is targeting the medical system as well. And Nora's report off the beginning just shows that this is just a war against civilians. They're dropping bombs into tented camps and smashing people's houses like this. But you can see the two fighters here with his 𝐓𝐴𝐶 getting into position. And I just wanted to pause there because it was a good example of being able to see the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 for people we don't often. I mean, I've shown it to you before if you've been on this ride with us, these whole genocidal 8 months. We've been showing what it looks like from the outside. And so just to give you some stats, the IDF claimed 3 killed in action in Rafah in a booby-trapped house, an officer and 2 severely wounded soldiers in a tunnel raid, and then an officer of the Yahalom Special Forces Tunnel Unit, combat engineers. They say combat engineers, but they're actually not combat soldiers. They're just engineers. And that's one of the reasons why we know that Israel's not fighting in the tunnels, because the Yahalom guys that are the tunnel guys, they don't go into the tunnels. And the infantry doesn't go into the tunnels either. You can see lots of testimonies from soldiers who say that their job is to go up to the tunnel. If they discover a tunnel, they joke, they say, we point our gun in it and take a selfie, and then we call the Yahalom unit. So the infantry units aren't following people down tunnels, which is also something for people who say, are they giving up these tunnel positions by showing these videos? The Israelis aren't going down into the tunnel positions. So let's do number 3, Tamara. This is Qassam again. You can see someone's house with all their clothes piled up there, and that's a D9 bulldozer with the cockpit right there. That's a 𝐓𝐴𝐶 105 tandem charge being blasted from so few feet that the pieces of the vehicle are flying through the window after it, and that's just a deadly hit. And this is a one from behind. Same deal. You do not want to be riding in the cockpit of a D9 getting hit by a tandem charge RPG from within 50 meters, which is, these are way within 50 meters. It makes a mess of the situation. Now, some of these D9 bulldozers are actually unmanned. So it's possible that there's nobody in these bulldozers. And for the Israelis, one of the reasons why they made the bulldozers automatic is because of scenes like this, because their soldiers get blasted in them all the time. So the rear cockpit has slat armor, you can see there, and these are designed to destroy homogeneous armor or sandwich armor, folded armor of a tank. So it's considerably thicker, designed for considerably thicker than these bulldozers. When you get a pot shot like that at a bulldozer, it's a bad outcome. Almost guaranteed for these fighters. And then because of the way the house, we saw the layout of the house when he went through it, he's clearly going to be able to exit that house and return to his base safely. Let's go to number 4 after this scene wraps up. Because watch this, pops open the door, dead straight on the tank barrel of a Merkava 4 tank. Just watch it again. Dead straight on. The tank barrel is pointing right at him. He's 25 meters, 30 meters max away. And then if you see, yeah, we can see the pause there. We'll go back and show it again one more time. But look at this. What you see here is that the tank barrel, the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 shot lands underneath the tank barrel and explodes the shell in the tank barrel. And we've seen that a couple of times. We saw it during the Battle of Shifa, what I showed you guys that happened. It looked like the cannon exploded. Now there's a breach on the door of the Merkava, so the loader loads the shell in, and then there's a breech door that closes. So it's possible that that exploding tank barrel didn't blast into the turret of the tank and cause a fire of the type that I read to you last week on the show. But likely what you're seeing is significant damage. Can we show it again one more time tomorrow? Because watch the way, number 4, watch the way that he comes up to this door and just pops it open. Bang. And again, you're seeing bravery, but you're seeing skill, because he didn't get there and then drive the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 into that pile of rubble. If you watch in slow motion, you can see the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 round hit underneath the turret, in the turret gap underneath the barrel, which is a weak spot on the tank. And also the barrel wrapping is a weak spot on the tank. So again, we see one of those shots from a helmet GoPro. And then you see the fighter, watch, instantly turn around, not admiring his work, instantly turning around, and there's the cannon going off. That's the cannon barrel exploding on either side. And it looks exactly like the other ones. Like, I don't know, I feel like we should run this one for 15 minutes because it's an unbelievable scene. But we won't. You can see these on my Instagram, or not on my Instagram. What is it called? Twitter. On my Twitter. What is it called? X. On my X, Jon Elmer. Just my name is the Twitter. Okay, one more time here. Watch it go between. You can see the round pops. That gray smoke is the round going off, and the red smoke is the cannon barrel taking off. And again, it's too close, according to Qassam's engineering specifications, too close for the trophy system to interact. And you can see the trophy if you want to look. It's on the upper left corner of the tank, on our right if you're looking at it. And you can see it doesn't engage. And this is, again, the Israelis and the Americans are saying that this is not the major operation in Rafah, but their tanks are getting blasted and their soldiers are getting killed, multiple a day, and they're carrying out massacres. Okay, this will be the last one, but watch it. Watch the first shot. See the gray smoke is the 𝐓𝐴𝐶 hitting, and then the orange smoke. So that, and then the orange smoke is the cannon barrel blowing up, which would, if the breach is not fully closed properly, would blast the flame into the turret of the tank and cause a serious mess that someone will testify to Haaretz to, or you'll see in pictures of burn units in Israeli hospitals where they actually have the gauze to treat those, unlike in Gaza where they've left them, where the blockade has left them without those resources, as Tarek aptly pointed out. Let's do number 5 here tomorrow, because he's going to pop another door open. Hi. He just pops it open. And there's the back of a D9 armored bulldozer from the length of your hallway there. I don't know what that is, 30 feet. Way too close for any kind of active protection system. Way too strong around. That's a Tandem 85. That's what I was saying before. That's the twin charge, the tandem charge of the 85 millimeter that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 added. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 added that nub at the end so that it could be a tandem charge. The first charge rips through the slat armor that this armored bulldozer has, and the second round follows through. It blasts right into the cockpit where the commander and the driver are in there beside each other. So this is southeast Rafah, again, southeast of the Rafah camp. And just the proximity, again, is just unbelievable. And the door popping open, and you can see the backwash from the backblast from the Yasin when he turns around here. You can see how far back it goes. But look at direct hit, cockpit. Bad news. You don't want to be in that cockpit when that strike hits. We'll give you one more time. Okay, let's go to number 6 here tomorrow. But again, fighter returns to his base safely. And this is a rocket attack. So I don't think the rockets are a particularly critical way to evaluate the capacity of the resistance. I've said that all along. It's an important part, but the idea that they're not firing rockets doesn't have anything to do with their capacity being destroyed. And just the other day, they sent, according to the Israeli defense minister, millions of Israelis ran to the shelters, is what he said, when they fired 8 long-range rockets from Tel Aviv for the first time since February. Israel's been saying that they knocked out this capability, but they clearly didn't. This is something that has been happening regularly throughout the war. Of course, in October, when it wasn't a ground war, these rockets were firing. By the beginning of November, they had fired 12,000 rockets, and Israel said that they had intercepted 2,000. So their magical Iron Dome, 2,000 out of 12,000 rockets that were fired. So these rockets were fired from Rafah, from the area the Israelis are operating. And that's one thing that these rocket teams do as a statement to Israel, that they fire from the territory that Israel is operating in. And so these rockets were unnecessary. We don't give them enough of their just time, because during this war, they always get bumped. The mortars and the rockets teams always get bumped by the Yasin anti-tank squads and the Shawad EFP guys who run up and attach things to tanks. And the rockets, they're just sort of, they all look kind of the same. They look like they go up in the sky like this. So just visually, I haven't been bringing them to you, but there's been 3 times more rockets fired than were fired in the 2014 war. And at that time, that was the first war that they reached Tel Aviv with their rockets. And just to give you a sense, the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 rocket program in 2004, the maximum range was 10 kilometers. In 2008, it was 40 kilometers. In 2012, it was 75 kilometers. By the 2014 war, they had a 160 kilometer range that could reach Haifa from Gaza. From Tel Aviv to Gaza City is 70 kilometers. So any of these rockets that I'm about to show you here in the rocket program that have a 70 or above are all able to target Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv's about 110 kilometers, 105 kilometers from southern Rafah, which is where these rockets were fired from Rafah. And we know that in the 2014 war, these rockets shut down Ben Gurion Airport. But if we go to the next clip, number 7 tomorrow, we can see the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 arsenal, the arsenal of rockets and the family of each rocket. And we can see that they all have different colors. And we saw the rockets that were just fired. We saw them have a gray tail. So these are the first ones named after Izzeddin al-Qassam. There you go. They have a 30 kilogram warhead and they travel 20 kilometers. Qassam is obviously the man named for the group. And he was a militant leader in the late 1920s who formed the first militant cells that would become the modern armed struggle in Palestine. He went underground and fought in the hills of Jenin in a very well-known and inspiring operation before he was killed. And his death was sort of seen as the crystallizing moment of the Arab revolt of 1936, which was truly the first Intifada. And that war in 1936 was put down by the British in a brutal campaign that destroyed Palestinian life in many critical ways and allowed for the 1948 Nakba, because the fighters of 1936 were jailed and their movements destroyed by the British. So each one of these rockets is named after a fighter. I got caught up in the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 one, but we're going to loop this one more time, and I'll show you who each of these are named after. This is Abdulaziz Rantisi with 100 kilometer payload and 170 kilometer distance, and they call it the R-170, the Rantisi. Abdulaziz Rantisi was a founder and key political leader. And this is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, and he gets the best rocket. It's the 250 highest payload, highest distance. And 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 was, of course, the chief bomb maker, Mohandas, the engineer of the 𝐬𝐏𝐶𝐬𝐏 brigades. And you can see those rockets. Let's do it one more time tomorrow, and I'll give people who the middle rockets are named after. You can see the size of them. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿 was what he did was popularize bomb making using basically kitchen, using household items and making them in your kitchen. And he worked with Adnan Al-Ghul to maximize the capacity of the 𝐬𝐏𝐶𝐬𝐏 brigade's armed system. So that's the 𝐬𝐏𝐶 rocket. That's what you heard about from years back. That in the old days they fired one in 2001, and up to more than 12,000 have been fired in this war. So this is the M90, named after Ibrahim al-Muqaddam, and it's got a 50 kilogram warhead, 90 kilometer distance. And he was the founder from Barej camp, from the middle camps. He's a 𝐬𝐿 commander. And this is Ahmed Jabari. He was assassinated in 2012, and he was the real professionalizer of the 𝐬𝐿 fighting force. He was assassinated at the beginning of the 2012 war. And this is the rocket they fired. You can see the gray tail. This is named for Riyad al-Attar, who was assassinated in the 2014 ceasefire negotiations, when he was the key player in those ceasefire negotiations. And presumably Egypt gave up his contact, and he was assassinated immediately after. And so I did Rantisi. And so Riyad al-Attar, to fire an A-120, which is what the rockets they fired from Rafah were, it's a signal. It's a signal they're firing on Tel Aviv. It's a signal they're firing the rocket named after the brigade commander from Rafah. And Riyad al-Attar is famous for handing over Gilad Shalit in the Shalit handover, along with Ahmed Jabari. And in that exchange, Yahya Sinwar came back to Gaza, and well, the rest is history after that. And they, the 𝐬𝐿, yeah, let's show the next two. So this is Riyad al-Attar, and you can see the gray rocket. So 𝐬𝐿 doesn't say in their field reports that this weapon or that weapon were used most of the times, especially for rockets, especially for the long-range rockets. But they just showed us the gray tail when they were loading that. When they were loading one of the 8 rockets into the long-range rocket launcher. And if we look at the next one tomorrow, I just gave you a freeze frame here that just shows you the scale of the missiles. So the 𝐈𝐴𝐿 on the end standing beside a person, so you can see the height of the rockets and the family of rockets. These are Gaza-built weapons. These are all built in the Gaza Strip. These are not imported rockets. They are built by the engineers of the 𝐬𝐶𝐬𝐏 brigades that began in the early 2000s to create a ballistic response to being besieged in your territory, with the keys, like the doors locked and the keys thrown away, with a risk-averse army. You're fighting the Israelis, who are scared to go in and fight on the ground. They're scared to get out of their tanks, which is something that we always see and have seen all throughout this war. And so to build this rocket program is a significant part of the resistance program. But it's not, I will say, to go back to the beginning, it is not a distinction. If you don't see long-range rockets for a couple of months, it doesn't mean that the capacity, the fighting capacity of the 𝐬𝐶𝐬𝐏 brigades has been degraded in any way. But Qassam throws these out every couple of months to remind us of that and to make Israelis stop their cars on their highways and run and dive into the ditch and hide in the ditch, or run all through the town for their, in Tel Aviv looking for bomb shelters. Because you have a bit of time if you're in Tel Aviv to find a bomb shelter. Whereas in the Gaza envelope, as we know from October 7th, people's rooms, their safe rooms, are right in their house. They're often their bedrooms because they don't have time to deal with the rockets on the far left there, those smaller rockets. They end up in the envelope in like 15 to 30 seconds, sometimes even less. So that's why on October 7th, the world learned about the safe rooms that Israelis have and how most of them are in their bedrooms, because it's the fastest way to handle that situation. So that's the report from Rafah.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.